Good day, everyone, and welcome to OBTEC 16 Online Forum. I am Francesca Viniz Mayorga, your Master of Ceremony. Let us start this program with an opening prayer by Diane Vicen, to be followed by our national anthem.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Almighty. Father God in heaven, we thank you for this wonderful day that you have given unto us. As we begin this activity, we want to ask you to guide and help us finish well. We pray for a strong internet connection so that we would have a smooth communication. Thank you for the opportunity that you have given to us, that we have this culminating activity. Thank you for the life of our Professor PNU and our classmates. We are grateful that you have gathered us to share what we have learned to each other, and that together we are in unity with one mind and heart to have a successful output. As we begin this activity, may you guide and be with us to the end. For we pray, believing in the name of our Lord Jesus. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Bayang magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa litid mo'y buhay. Lupang minirang, duyan ka ng magiging, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisihil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit pabagaw, may gilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdidinig. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidinig. Lupa ng araw ng ating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Sa piling mo, aming ligaya ng pagmay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
This presentation is solely for educational purposes. The views and opinions expressed by the host do not reflect or state those of the block and its institution. Furthermore, the assumptions, views, opinions, and insinuations made by the host or guest do not reflect the administration, facilitators, and the institution.
To formally begin our program, allow me to give you an overview of the event. In today's forum, we'll use a moderated topic session. About 6 speakers will each give a short 3-minute presentation around the one topic area under in-person classes amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. After watching the video presentations, participants will be asked to raise their flags to indicate whether you are pro or con in the implementation of face-to-face classes. 5 minutes will be allotted for the discussion of each side. The designated panelists will be facilitating each discourse. A few reminders before we start. Please make sure that your microphones are muted at all times except when you are allowed to speak. And if your internet connectivity allows you, please do open your cameras, especially when it is your turn to talk. The use of informal and curse words are also forbidden. Lastly, let us show our utmost respect to meet everyone in this meet. If you understand and agree with those rules, please type 1 in the comment section. So without further ado, let's start our program. To give us an overview about face-to-face classes in the Philippines, let us watch this video prepared by Ms. Bezalel Kaday.
On January 30, 2020, the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a public emergency of international concern and identified it as a pandemic on March 11. 4 days after, which is March 15, 2020, the Philippines officially entered the lockdown state and undergo a community quarantine guidelines. Schools in the Philippines have been closed since the start of COVID-19 pandemic. The Philippines also had one of the longest school breaks in the world without any type of formal classes from March 20 to October 2020. Because of the circumstances, the educational system stumbled and created a new system or distance learning, or as we all know as synchronous and asynchronous classes. According to Commission on Higher Education Chairperson Prospero de Vera III, limited face-to-face classes will now be allowed under alert levels 1, 2, and 3, subjected to certain conditions like limited indoor venue capacity and fully participation of fully vaccinated. There is no discrimination since all have the opportunity to participate in classes. Unvaccinated will not be allowed to attend face-to-face classes to protect the vaccinated faculty and students. The number of attendees on campuses will now depend on how many students are vaccinated. The number of students inside a classroom also depends on how it is retrofitted. Students will have to observe physical distancing and wear face masks throughout the class. No dividers in between chairs of students will be installed to ensure the smooth return of face-to-face classes in college. De Vera asked school officials to coordinate with local governments on this effort. The Commission on Higher Education hereby informs that the date of the Phase 2 of the implementation of limited face-to-face classes for all programs of HEIs in areas under Alert Level 3 should begin on 31 of January 2022.
What a brief yet informative presentation, Ms. Katay. Let us now move on to our first subtopic, the risk of pandemic in face-to-face classes, to be presented by Sofia Oliverio.
The novel coronavirus disease, also known as COVID-19, is a severe acute respiratory syndrome that has enormous impact on the death of people worldwide. A pandemic refers to an epidemic spread over the several countries or continents. Right now, we are experiencing a pandemic worldwide, and many people have died. Epidemics and pandemics occur over a relatively long period. It may be even months, years between the beginning and the end of these health disasters. A pandemic that is ignored by most people and made unnecessary for everyone to worry about can pose a risk to every person's life. The lack of understanding and preparedness against it is a considerable risk for everyone because the virus is one of the opponents that our country is fighting. Inadequate preparation and prevention against the virus can endanger the lives of everyone, whether affected by the COVID-19 or not. Analyzing the causes of the pandemic risk is a significant factor for DepEd and CHED to implement face-to-face classes. In a survey conducted by the Philippine Normal University regarding the students' readiness to join the limited face-to-face classes planned to take place this year 2022 says that some parents are undecided about including their children in the limited face-to-face classes due to the changing new cases of COVID-19 in our country. Also, most of the students worries about returning to schools in 2022 because of the danger that the new COVID-19 variant has, which is the Delta and the Omicron variant that is more transferable with dangerous effects to those affected by this new COVID-19 variant. Another risk is the possible unsafe facilities used for the class events and the fear of transportation of students going to schools because of the virus spreading anywhere. Therefore, the parents and students are not sure to take a risk to return face-to-face classes in the school. Hence, the institution coordinated with the government to plan and execute a safe environment for children returning to school or attending the pilot testing of face-to-face classes. Tools and equipments from different sectors will also help establish a systematic protocols for the physical meetups or hybrid classes. In conclusion, the pandemic poses many risks, and various schools try to reduce and do their best to fight the spread of the virus caused by COVID-19 for the safety of returning students to the face-to-face setup of the class. So let's keep an open mind and look at the pros and cons of the situation.
Thank you, Ms. Oliverio, for addressing the pandemic risk. So now we are moving on to the raising of flags. Let us see who among the participants are pro in executing physical classes despite the risk of pandemics. You may now raise your flags. We have Ms. Evangeline, Miss Hannah, Miss Denise, Mr. Kyle, Mr. Kako, Miss Maybelline, Mr. Leandro. Now you may put down your flags. Who disagrees with this idea? Please raise your red flag. We have Miss Thisha, Mr. Von, Miss Shallow, Miss Lay, Mr. Angelo, Mr. Wadayko. Okay, let us see in this open discussion for this topic. Mr. Ramos and Miss Casimiro.
Thank you, Miss Mayorga. Let's hear it from the pro side. May we hear from Lucky Jen Balao, Maybelline Cagara, Kailin Celino, Denise M. Puerto, and Kirk Kako.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lucky Jen Balao from pro part of the pandemic risk. Experts have found vaccines with a 95% efficacy rate that are widely available these days. The vaccination compromises 2 doses and a booster shot for our immune system to improve. Although side effects vary depending on the individual health condition, this is the most effective weapon as well as adhering to the safety protocols to avoid spreading of COVID-19. So the higher-ups must reopen the schools as quickly as possible as most individuals have been fully vaccinated. Furthermore, various establishments such as malls and restaurants have opened, so why are the schools still closed?
Yes, and to bank on what you said, opening schools would be a way to support vulnerable and underprivileged students. How? Many low-income college students lack the resources required for remote learning, meaning this kind of setup is especially hard on students with limited access to online education, with no access to internet and gadgets. And with campuses closed, underprivileged students may face a great likelihood of falling behind. Hence, the dropout rates are increasing. In fact, the number of enrollees for this academic year has dropped to the lowest. The data states the enrollment in state and local communities and colleges dropped by 12.80%. This proves that the distance learning modality is not suitable and convenient for all. So if we allow face-to-face to happen, it would be a great ease, comfort, and convenience to students, particularly to underprivileged students. Therefore, our praise of no student shall be left behind should always be our top priority given the situation we have now.
On the other hand, Maybelline, most people, particularly the guardians of every student, are concerned about the pandemic risk of implementing face-to-face classes. However, as I examine the pilot implementation run of face-to-face classes right now, I think it should definitely be pushed, securing each student's health by providing proper ventilation, safety measures, proper hygiene, and keeping each student at a safe distance from one another. In this situation, I agree to perform this guideline set, and by doing so, it will considerably prioritize the health of every student in which they are monitored, unlike in their houses where they are suffering from their health issue.
We've had enough of online learning that has been going on for too long now. Aside from being expensive, it is not good for the mental health and physical health of both students and teachers. Technology-based learning is not for everyone, so we must find a way to give accessible and affordable quality education to the Filipinos. And just like what Kyle stated, there are ways to implement safe face-to-face classes, and with proper coordination with the people involved, we can bring the old normal back.
That's right. So upon recognizing the need to safely reopen schools, DepEd and DOH worked hand in hand in crafting the operational guidelines on the pilot implementation of face-to-face learning. Pushing the face-to-face classes into fruition would urge schools to take necessary protocols and guidelines in ensuring the safety of each student and reducing pandemic risk. That is our take on this issue. Thank you.
All right, now that we listen to the opinions of those who are in the pro side, of course, you also need to hear the opinions of those who are in the con side, starting with Von Bunao, followed by Angelo Caigas, Elizabeth De Leon, Michelle Ensamega, and Clarice Gonzalez. Mr. Bunao, you may start.
Thank you, Ms. Casimiro. If you can stay at home, that will always welcome you to his home. Education plays a big role in everyone's life, specifically to the youth. However, we should not risk our loved ones, considering we have better options on how to continue their learning by means of blended and flexible learning. I also want to point out that the virus evolves faster and the vaccine can only do so much without following health protocols. Though many people are vaccinated, the virus still creates variants that are becoming stronger and spreads faster because of people not following health protocols. I can say that we will all be stuck in this pandemic as long as people don't cooperate with each other.
Thank you, Bon, for that considerate statement. To the honorable host and distinguished delegates, good afternoon. The virus knows no color, gender, or age. It brings no exemptions. Our battle against the COVID-19 is still ongoing. With that, I believe the implementation of face-to-face classes must be held and set aside for the meantime. Distance learning may be more stressful than the traditional learning setup for many, but for me, it is the best option we have now to continue our education amid this catastrophe. COVID-19 is not just a health issue. So we cannot just risk our lives for the sake of face-to-face classes. It is a societal concern that affects not only the educational sectors, but all the institutions that run the society. For now, I believe the best thing to do is to support more the students and educator to empower distance learning by providing them what they need and by listening to their concerns and ideas. In the end, we are all battling this virus. Everyone is suffering, and so understanding and empathy must be our language to connect. Education may be a lifetime achievement for many of us, but in times like these, where our enemies cannot be seen, I do believe that we should prioritize first everyone's safety before we fight for our personal goals and dreams. This is Angelo Kaiga saying that our dream of returning face-to-face classes may be hard to achieve for now, but I believe that it will never be impossible to happen.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. This is Elizabeth M. De Leon from the Con side. Yes, we see eye to eye on this matter, Jello. I also can't agree with the face-to-face classes yet. I believe that the pandemic threat hasn't lessened despite the colossal initiative done by both private and public sectors. With the pandemic spotlight on these long-standing challenges, opening classes will only exacerbate the situation. Thus, COVID-19 cases will elevate, causing us to face another issue stemming from our decisions. Besides the aforementioned risks brought by the pandemic, I could say that there are a lot of things that are in need of consideration before going back to the traditional setup. We have witnessed the tragic impacts of the pandemic to individuals, families, communities, and countries, and we do not want to increase those statistics anymore. Although distance learning is somewhat challenging, we do not want students to be idled by the situation. Hence, schooling is way more possible through the setup. As we try to uphold the school's philosophy, complying with the school requirements will still allow students to learn. And through the heroic actions of our teachers and facilitators, of course, learning will not be compromised. Thank you.
I like what Elizabeth said a while ago. We are indeed still very far from the finish line. The moment we think that everything is getting better, we always seem to go back to the square one with the surge of infected cases since the start of the year. I believe that we must put on hold the return of face-to-face classes. The recent surge of Omicron variants make it unsafe. Yes, most of us are vaccinated. Yes, we are young and might be able to withstand the virus. But how about those inside of our household? We have elders, younger siblings living with us who are vulnerable to the disease. We cannot take risks at this point in time, especially when the positivity rate is nearing 50% and cases continue to increase each day. Moreover, I see no harm being infected with extending online classes for weeks or months if we can be a little more empathetic to each other's situation, prioritizing the safety and health of everyone. Someday, we'll overcome these challenges.
We don't see our enemy. As Michelle mentioned, different COVID variants are one of the pandemic risks that we are facing. Like the Delta variant, where it is highly contagious, 2 times as contagious as previous variants. According to WHO, vaccines do not provide full or 100% protection, so breakthrough infection where people get the virus despite having been fully vaccinated. So to retaliate on what Ms. Lakijan stated, even if the teachers, school staff, and the students are vaccinated, we can say that they are safe from getting the virus because they need to go outside to attend face-to-face classes. There are 53,922,039 fully vaccinated and 4,122,981 people got their booster shot, and as of January 12, 2022, we have 28,007 new cases and 181,016 active cases, and the Metro Manila is still under critical risk. It only proves that vaccine and safety protocols aren't enough to say that it is safe to have face-to-face classes. And even if the student, teacher, and the school staff are fully vaccinated, there is a chance and possibility that they can get sick from the virus. So, should we prioritize education over the health and safety of the students?
Wow, what a great discussion, and it has finally ended. I think the participants deliver their thoughts with clarity, and I personally think that given our situation and the continuously increasing number of cases, I think we're still not ready for the face-to-face classes. We're not only risking the lives of the students, but also the lives of their loved ones, especially the elders, due to the fact that they face significant risk of developing severe illness. And I also don't think that the safety protocols and vaccines are enough for us to go back to the traditional setup. I know that education is important, but so is our lives. And I hope that we can get through this together. How about you, Jasmer? Mind if you share your thoughts?
Yes. For me, based on what I heard, pandemic really hit us hard. Pros and cons are still inflict us with trauma that will affect on how we live our lives from this day moving forward. So the thing that I can say, risk is always a part of our daily lives. And metrics and statistics gives us this outlook that can change our minds to be more cautious around the people and how we live our lives through our daily lives. And through all the pros and cons that are given today, the only thing that I can say is that we can move forward and be more cautious on what we do from this day moving forward. And that's all. Back to you, Miss Mayorga.
Thank you, Mr. Jasmer and Miss Bea, as well as our pro and cons team in the subtopic 1, pandemic risk. Okay, let's shift our gears and now listen to the next presenters regarding the travel restrictions, Miss Angel Pulgaridad and Miss Angeline Ocad.
Pleasant afternoon, everyone. I am Angel T. Pulgaridad and I am here to open a new forum, Travel Restrictions. In the time of the pandemic, one of the terms that we heard all over the news is travel ban and travel restrictions. First, let us define the meaning of travel restrictions. From the word itself, it is restricting or putting limitations on traveling from one place to another to reduce or prevent something. Therefore, travel restrictions removes the privilege of traveling to different places depending on its absolute implementation on the place where it is implemented. When the pandemic started, many countries immediately implemented international travel restrictions or travel bans. While here in the Philippines, the government implemented the intercity travel restriction during the enhanced community quarantine. Right now, there are 3 alert levels and the granular lockdown in the Philippines. The granular lockdown is the strictest since it only allows the health workers and non-health workers to move from a place to their workplace. The 3 alert levels follow with level 3 as the strictest because it only allows 30% to 50% capacity in transportation, and level 1 with most leniency as it allows full capacity in the transportation.
Now, the Philippines have some travel restrictions, and it depends on the condition of a particular place. The restrictions may be international or local, in other words, interstate or intercity. For this round, let us focus on the intercity travel restrictions. Traveling between cities and provinces today require much effort and time due to the implemented protocols by the government. Local restrictions may have additional requirements like PCR testing, different certificates from the local government, or a specific schedule date when you can go to that place or province. We also have intercity travel restrictions. The level of restrictions depends on the alert level of the city. Under this, a person from one city cannot go to another city unless he or she is authorized, again depending on the conditions of higher authorities. In relation, Philippine Normal University formed a committee to gather information about the students regarding the F2F classes. According to the source posted by PNU Mulat, 1,301 out of 2,115 respondents are concerned about their distance from PNU if the limited face-to-face classes is implemented, since most of the students or respondents live in NCR, Calabarzon, and Central Luzon. This shows that distance causes such apprehensions to pupils. Now that face-to-face classes are near, traveling is a crucial part. With a given facts and statement, let's see what the participants think about it.
That was a very nice presentation by Miss Ocado and Miss Tan. Let's give them a round of applause for it. Alright, now we are moving on to the raising of flags again for this topic, travel restrictions. Let us see who among the participants are pro in executing physical classes despite these travel restrictions. You may now raise your flags. Alright, we have here Mr. Ronfel, Mr. AC, Miss Evangeline, Miss Rosel, Miss Hannah, and Miss Maybelline. Then, you may now put down your flags. Participants who want to object, raise your red flags. Miss Shello, Miss Fisha, Mr. Angelo, Mr. Wadaiko, Miss Lei. Alright, let us now hear to open our discussion for this topic. You have the floor, Miss Isabel and Miss Celine.
Alright, let's hear first from the pro side. Follow this sequence as you express your ideas. Miss Hamisola, Miss Marbella, Miss Manawis, Mr. Marla, and Mr. Paez. Miss Eva, you may start.
Thank you, Miss Archana. I think that travel restriction is effectively good as the government would consider its implementation according to season. As shown in a Center on Social and Economic Dynamics at Brookings report, the rate of transmission will drop if there is no further delay in imposing restriction on the possible higher period of seasonal transmission. For example, if the government had carefully considered and enforced the travel restriction during the recent Christmas season, then the cases as of January 2022 wouldn't be that high.
I am very much agree with you, Miss Eva. Authoritarian travel restrictions are not implemented just because the government wants to. Rather, it's for citizens' sake. It helps to prevent the transmission of COVID-19, especially since we can control easily and identify who is infected with this virus. Otherwise, transmission will be utilized and minimized with proper restriction, which can give benefit to in attaining safety and effective learning in face-to-face classes in the midst of pandemic. For those students who lives in other cities, then they can present their vaccination card first for them to be able to get in. Let's keep in our mind that it is enshrined in international health regulation that countries should do their best to keep borders, travel, and trade open during these periods. It was being said by Stephen Morrison, Senior Vice President of the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you.
In my perception, travel measures played an important role in shaping the early transmission dynamics of the COVID-19 pandemic. In an article entitled How Effective Are Travel Bans During a Pandemic, it is said that travel restrictions are not likely to be completely effective at preventing the introduction of a communicable disease, but there is evidence in some situations they may slow the introduction and spread of the transmission for a period of time. Travel restrictions reduced the spread of the virus, so it may be the most important at the start and by the end of the pandemic.
Yes, I very much agree with all of that because we all know that travel restrictions are one of the most concerning issues in our country. Because if this restriction were lifted, it could cause huge negative effects or break many things, including face-to-face classes. Face-to-face classes education will automatically stop or will be cancelled if travel is limited due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Travel restriction can affect many things, but they can also have a positive effect on the pandemic risk that we have been experiencing since 2020. reducing or controlling the rising number of active cases. That is one of the most alarming issues on the whole planet.
Enlightening inputs, pro team. And now let us see how will the opposing team deal with this. In this order, Ms. Lanchon, Ms. Panaligan, Ms. Mendoza, Mr. Manigdag, and Mr. Olraires. What are your thoughts? You may now start, Ms. Lanchon.
Thank you, Ms. Celine. I would like to echo what Mr. Paez said. The travel restrictions are one of the most concerning issues in our country because it is highly effective in reducing the spread of the virus. And yes, if these restrictions were lifted, it would negatively impact the country's journey of overcoming the pandemic, and that includes face-to-face classes. If face-to-face education will be pursued, it will automatically be halted when travel will yet again be limited. But as we have witnessed from the eventful journey of the Philippines during this pandemic, our recklessness of freedom often strikes us back, then we fall 2 times harder than before. So what's the point of doing face-to-face classes this time if there is a high probability that we'll suffer losses again? So I guess we can conclude that travel restrictions play a very significant role in the implementation of in-person classes. It has the power to either accelerate or impede our plans in providing quality education amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. So for me, the best way to advance towards our goal is to use these restrictions for our benefit. Thank you.
Yes, Sherlock, thanks, Michelle. So I completely agree with what Rosal said about how travel restriction may only delay the arrival of disease in one country in days or weeks. But I do not believe that it could be possibly the most important at the start and by the end of the pandemic, because very little evidence that travel bans eliminate the disease in the long term. According to the study led by Nicole Eric, lecturer in the University of Washington Department of Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences and colleague at Johns Hopkins University, the effect of travel restriction are only temporary. Travel bans offend economies, communities, and healthcare systems, but there is little evidence to suggest that they prevent the spread of the disease. These restrictions are only obstacle to educational department to conduct face-to-face classes. It must be removed and should focus on other solutions like vaccines or other protocols, because again, travel restrictions are only temporary solution. We need a long-term solution for the safety of the students and for the quality of the education. Thank you.
I totally agree. And also, we have to admit that we can all infer that inactive learning is an effective way of engaging and yielding knowledge to our dear students. Inactive learning engages children who have been nurtured in a high stimulation environment and sharpens critical thinking skills, which are essential for the development of analytic reasoning. Instead of simply regurgitating remembered information, a student who can examine an open-ended question with imagination and logic is learning how to make decisions. In addition, inactive learning also teaches youngsters how to communicate and work well in groups. But however, since as a solution, the country and our fellow educator heroes generated new creative and innovative ways to continue to provide high-quality education. So, however, considering the vitality of interactive learning, considering also the evident deteriorating consequence of this pandemic, we can definitely conclude that lifting travel bans will not do any good to the current predicament of the country. May we also reminded that we are not on the same place as we are last 2 years. So implementation and lifting restrictions will have a massive result to everyone's life, specifically the Filipino people. So furthermore, details supporting the claim will be discussed. Thank you.
Yes, we can all agree that given the hazard associated with COVID-19, it is preferable to learn face-to-face. As a result, it is reassuring to many students that the education industry is considering allowing face-to-face classes as long as minimal health criteria are met and student safety is ensured. However, there is a problem. There is a problem. The enacting of travel restrictions people's movement. Students that live outside of the city where they are studying will face significant difficulties. There are numerous regulations to fulfill when it comes to travel limitations. It takes a long time. The vaccine it is the major requirements for the public to travel from one location to another, is also a crucial to consider. You must also have the confirmation that you don't have the virus, but providing a negative result of RT-PCR or swab test to travel freely outside of your community. So you see, enforcing travel restrictions is not only time-consuming in face-to-face learning, but it can also cost money in the long run. This has a significant impact on the students who are struggling financially at home, and it may be a barrier to their studies.
Okay, to conclude our team's take on this issue, let me proclaim that the imposition of travel restrictions while conducting face-to-face classes will only give students a difficult time going to school. We all know that the Philippines is one of the developing third world countries, which means the country is still economically growing. According to the Philippine Statistics Association, or PSA, the proportion of poor families in the Philippines in the first semester of 2021 is 23.7%, which translates into 26.14 million families who live below the poverty threshold, estimated at 12,082, on the average family of 5 per month. With this statistical data, how can we expect the students to have a budget to rent or even own a private vehicle for them to utilize?
Wow, what a heated discussion from our participants, right, Sab?
Indeed, Celine, I was completely struck when Mr. Paez and I believe Ms. Marbella from the pro team stated that travel restrictions can bring good effects to the prevention of the virus. It means that we can reduce and control the rising number of active cases of those who are positive of the COVID-19. For me, since we can now notice the enormous surge, I have to agree with what Ms. Hamisola and Ms. Marbella said, who is also from the pro team. If the government only implemented the travel restrictions earlier, then our number of cases would have been very much reduced by now. Okay, moving on. I know most of us would like to share their insights as well, but let's take down notes and reserve it for our turn. Am I right, Celine?
I totally agree, Sab. But for me, I would like to commend the con team. For me, though, it was Ms. Luncheon's idea that struck me the most. The travel restrictions play a vital role in the implementation of face-to-face classes. And with that being said, we should use these restrictions to our benefit in order for us to reach our goal. I was impressed by the factual evidences served by Ms. Panaligan and Mr. Olares that supported their statements. I also agree with the point given by Ms. Mendoza as well as Mr. Manigdag that pursuing face-to-face classes will require a lot of time, effort, and money, which will cause some financial struggles for some students, which will lead us to our next subtopic to be discussed. Alright, people are getting more and more passionate as we progress. So let's not delay it any further. Ms. Mayarga, shall we return? Shall we continue?
Of course, Miss Aline, and thank you, Miss Sav, thank you for this theme of subtopic, travel restrictions. I agree with that. People are getting more and more passionate. I'm so amazed with how people speak eloquently. Now let us proceed to our last session. Kindly play our last video presentation for today that tackles students and parents' financial concerns, to be addressed first by Miss Jeremiah Marano and Cyrene Lucay-Lucay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jeremiah Angeline Merano.
And I am Cyrene Lucay-Lucay, opening the last forum, Financial Concerns.
In the government's plan of implementing face-to-face classes, they should also consider the students' financial concerns. Why? Because we knew that since the pandemic began, many students have been struggling financially. For some, their parents have either lost their jobs or had their wages reduced. And even if they have alternative jobs, there are still needs that are not met. So, in the implementation of face-to-face classes, many students will struggle financially in house rent, utility bills, and foods.
If the government continues to hold face-to-face classes despite these concerns, one of the potential issues that students, particularly college students, may face is the transportation to and from school. Although some will live in their dorms, there's still a portion who will be living in their own houses. In line with these, the Philippine Normal University conducted a survey to ensure the readiness of their students for the upcoming face-to-face classes. The majority of the respondents said that they aren't ready yet because they live far from school and cannot afford the expenses if they decide to dorm. Aside from that, students also perceive a possible struggle to pay for other school necessities such as school uniforms and books. There is no doubt that lack of funds is the root of these issues.
However, if the parents have a stable job, the student will have no problem with the implementation of face-to-face classes because their parents are able to sustain all of their needs for this transition. Moreover, there are scholarships available to college students. One of the well-known scholarships available to them is the SM Foundation Scholarship, which offers numerous benefits such as full tuition assistance and monthly allowance. Aside from that, we have scholarships available from Commission on Higher Education, DOST, Mega World Foundation, and a variety from other public organizations.
That's right, Jeremiah. Now let us hear more from our participants.
Very well said, Miss Merano and Miss Lucay. Now, what are your takes in this matter, dear blackmates? Let us raise our flags. Who among you is still in agreement with implementing in-person classes? Let us see your green flags. We have here Miss Leanne, Miss Angeline, Mr. Kyle, Miss Bernadette, Miss Clarice, Miss Christina. Okay, noted. Please put your flags now. Participants who wants to object, please raise your red flag. Oh, we have here Mr. Wadaiko, Mr. Leo, Miss Trisha, Miss Cielo, Miss Hannah, Mr. Von, Mr. Angelo, Miss Lay, and Mr. John Ray. Okay. All right, let's open our discussion for the last topic. Miss Makaskas and Miss Malto, please take the lead.
Got it, host. First of all, thank you, Miss Merano and Miss Lucay for the short yet informative presentation of our last topic for this forum. That's only a teaser for what is about to transpire on today's last topic, which is about financial concerns during face-to-face classes. I am anticipating that there are a lot of participants who will be voicing out their disagreement regarding the topic. There are a lot of factors why face-to-face classes should not be implemented yet, but financial aspect is a factor that we are really concerned about. So I think the participants will favor more on the con side and they will give a strong points on this stand. But I also expect that the pros will also justify their stand on this matter and will also give us strong statements. After all, students are already expecting a back to normal classes this year. How about you, Rochelle?
Yes, Ara. I think financial concerns are a problem and we find a method to address it because we want them to be able to learn in a pleasant environment. Some of the parents are now prioritizing looking for jobs so they could pay bills which have piled up during lockdown. Education is not their top priority. Some of the parents said that their focus now is just to live because they don't have anything right now. Students should stop, but not only because of the pressure for online learning, but also due to financial reasons. In this case, we are officially opening the discussion of the subtopic 3, which is financial concerns on face-to-face, starting with the pro side. May we hear it from Dayan Bisad, followed by Bernata de Tirva, Angeline Tinajeros, Lakijan Balao, and Ronfel Pilapil.
What a wonderful day to share my insights regarding this matter. I am Dayan Vincent, one of the pro participants. In my perspective, when it comes to concerning the financial capabilities of the students and their parents, pushing through the face-to-face classes is, needless to say, feasible for those who are capable, and especially the scholars who accept financial support from the government or other foundations. Let's take, for example, the SM College Scholarship. Given that the student passed the screening or examination, they'll enjoy the benefits such as full tuition, monthly allowance, and part-time jobs. Now, considering the macroeconomic perspective, we cannot deny the fact that our country's economy was gravely affected by the pandemic. As we are forced to stay at home, So are many of the street vendors outside the schools, as well as public transportation drivers such as jeepneys, tricycle drivers, who were also forced to stay at home. However, those who still risk working outside are forced to increase their fare rates for there is very low demand. Moreover, if there is a face-to-face classes, chances are high for the economy to continue thriving, as well as the assurance of the workers' livelihood. As we realize, students and teachers are not the only ones affected by the pandemic, financially speaking, but also the workers of the economy. In light of financial concerns, face-to-face classes must be safely implemented. Thank you.
Moreover, scholarships are available from some local governments and other organizations. This will assist students in obtaining an education when the face-to-face classes is lifted. Scholarship programs will assist students, particularly those with financial difficulties. An example of scholarship programs in athlete is the University Athletic Association of the Philippines and the National Collegiate Athletic Association. These organizations will assist college students, especially in face-to-face classes, in becoming a part of the varsity, and at the same time, being a scholar in your school and receiving financial support for academic tuition and allowances. In fact, there are many different scholarship programs offered here in the Philippines. The academic scholarship programs, music vocal scholarship programs, and many more. In that way, many students will be eligible to receive a scholarship.
Good afternoon to each and everyone, and thank you, Ms. Raturza. Based on the discussion of the center and the gathered information of the researcher in the ProSite, for me, financial assistance was working students focus on their academics. One of the most significant benefits of providing scholarship for students, especially the college students, when it will open the face-to-face, how it allows them to focus on their academics without worrying about their finances. This way, it is motivated to study and they are given the time to pursue extracurricular activities that can help them develop their skills and other interests without worrying about their school expenses, like providing financial assistance and educational institutions give students the opportunity to reach and complete their higher education, especially in face-to-face classes. Thank you.
In my opinion, they should push the face-to-face classes for the college students since the learners learn efficiently and productively face-to-face rather than online class. And some of the LGUs, DOS, CHED, and other private organizations are offering scholarships plus allowance to aid their financial concerns according to the presenters. Stipend comes from this scholarship is a big help for the students' budget in going to the universities. It can also motivate students to work and study hard in order to maintain the grade required to remain a scholar.
So in my end, other than the financial assistance and the scholarships that are mentioned by the other pro members, I think we should also really give attention on the macroeconomic perspective of this matter, which is actually mentioned by Ms. Bizan, I think. So thank you so much for that. So good day, everyone. I am Ronfel Pilapala and I stand by pro face-to-face class implementation. Since the pandemic, our country suffered a nationwide crisis in terms of employment and businesses, which led to 8% of our working force to be left unemployed. So according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, unemployment rate was the highest last year in September 2021 at 8.9%. So probably you may ask, how exactly would this be addressed with the implementation of face-to-face classes? Well, people, we need to remember that our economy isn't working properly because there's no people right now to work with it to begin with. Face-to-face classes would mean that the students will need the products and services of companies, and so with that, these companies need to have more working force, which maybe later on, it may encourage them to employ people, and these people will now have a source of income. We worry about not having a source of livelihood in this time, but I think we're not going to have any if we don't take action in the situation. If there will be more opportunities to have a job because there's a demand outside, the family of the students can also look for the jobs to help themselves and help their students and the family. So I get it that of course we should be planning this carefully because there's still a risk of coronavirus and its variants. But in this case, people, we should also not overlook the benefits of having face-to-face classes to our students' learning progress and also our community's financial concerns. I think that's it for me and my team. So thank you so much.
Now that we listen to the opinions of those who are on the pro side, we also need to hear the opinion of the cons participants, starting with Monsur Pinlac, to be followed by Cristina Rollion, John Ray Torres, Lay Anyap, and Von Derek Buno.
Hi everyone, my name is Monsur M. Pinlac, one of the participants of cons side under subtopic number 3. For me, financial concerns are one of the reasons not to implement face-to-face classes. Most of the parents of students lost their job during the pandemic. They can't afford to send their children back to school because they are unemployed or lack of savings, which is obviously not a good reason to conduct a restricted physical classes. Their budgets are also not enough since we have been under lockdown for 2 years now. It's good that the government is giving the students financial assistance, but I think it is not enough. Given the expenses of a student, such as transportation fees, renting dorms, school uniforms, and other necessities when implementing face-to-face classes.
Thank you for your enlightening speech, Mr. Pinlac. Hello everyone, I'm Cristina Marillion. In my opinion, before they implement the face-to-face classes, they should ensure that they will provide the necessities of the students, such as face masks, alcohol, soap, and etc. We are still in the midst of a pandemic. Most of the parents or guardians lost their work due to the restriction of LGUs and companies. Most of the students at Philippine Normal Universities are far from the campus. Renting a dorm or an apartment will cost them more than 10,000 pesos a month and does not include the other expenses. And the Philippine Normal University conducted a survey in preparation for limited face-to-face classes, and according to the survey, 929 out of 2,115 respondents are concerned about their financial capability to meet school expenses.
I totally agree, Christina. Furthermore, many parents of the students are just starting again because we all know how pandemic made our life miserable. So in that scenario, we should not implement face-to-face. Instead, we should lay the groundwork for the student and for the parent. We should allow them to be financially prepared before allowing them to attend to school. Because many students struggled financially even before the pandemic began. So what's more now that many parents are unemployed and unable to provide adequate support for their children's education. So to conclude, we should wait until the parents are financially prepared before implementing face-to-face classes.
One of the challenges they foresee in implementing limited face-to-face classes is the sustainability of providing face masks, alcohol, soap, and other necessities. However, they didn't foresee the additional financial concerns that a student and parent could have as a result of implementation of limited face-to-face classes. Some parents are unable to send their children to school because they can't afford to provide an allowance since they are unemployed due to the restraints of COVID-19. Additionally, face-to-face classes are more expensive than online classes because you need to pay for textbooks, projects, transportation fee, bills, and rents. In contrast to online classes, a student is at home and safe, and all they need is a laptop that meets all of the requirements.
Thank you, Lay. This pandemic brought us many problems, specifically in terms of the financial aspect. Many Filipinos are jobless since many establishments are forced to close due to lockdowns that prevent the owners from earning. Before the pandemic started, we all knew that everyone's problem is money, right? But during the surge of COVID, its importance cannot be magnified enough for people's survival. Conducting face-to-face classes requires much financial provisions since the required equipment in implementing a conducive and safe environment is expensive. Therefore, I believe that face-to-face classes should be set aside first so we can prioritize the survival of every Filipino. Thank you.
The discussion of the topic 3 has finally ended, and I think the participants delivered their thoughts or opinions well and on point. Everyone did so well in this round. Don't you think so, Mayorga?
Yes, that's correct. This forum is coming to an end. Students from OBTEC 16 have expressed their opinions on the implementation of face-to-face classes under three different circumstances. The first is the risk of pandemic. On the pro team, many of them stated that reopening the schools would benefit less fortunate students who are no longer able to attend online classes because they cannot afford their educational needs. We are left with the question, various establishments such as malls and restaurants have opened, so why are the schools still closed? They have stated the number of dropout rates and underprivileged students, those who also suffer physically and mentally during online classes, emphasizing the phrase, no student shall be left behind, as well as the demand for pushing F2F to prioritize the health the most. While the other side stated that opening the schools will only put students, teachers, and other school personnel in danger even though we have vaccines and booster shots because it does not provide us with full protection, emphasizing how the pandemic threat hasn't lessened and our enemy cannot be seen, strengthening the word empathy. And here we are left with the question, should we prioritize education over the health and safety of the student? On the second aspect, we look at the travel restrictions. The pro team argues that these travel restrictions are advantageous for the execution of in-person classes as it is aided by vaccines, booster shots, and other protocols that restrict the flow of the virus. We are left with the statement that travel restrictions may be the most important at the start and even by the end of the pandemic. In contrast, the disapproving team debated that it is not practical, whether safety or financially, to take the risk because of the little capability of travel restrictions to suppress the effects of the virus. We were asked how we can expect the students to have the budget to rent or even own a private vehicle for them to utilize. Both have presented their data and references comprehensively. Finally, the financial aspect of studying face-to-face, according to the pro team, students do not have to be much concerned about their financial needs because there are numerous scholarships available from the government and other public and private organizations that will undoubtedly relieve them of financial stress. They have also discussed the macroeconomics aspect in which stressing the source of livelihood and job opportunities once that we open the face-to-face classes, and that we shouldn't overlook the benefits of having face-to-face classes to the community's financial concerns. While the opposing team emphasized on the greater cost of conducting physical classes now, it requires great financial resources for both the school and the students, and that being financially prepared shall be ensured before the implementation. The sustainability of providing face masks, alcohol, soap, and other necessities shall be focused on. Because many students struggle financially even before the pandemic began, it is asked, so what more now that many parents are unemployed and unable to provide adequate support of their children's education. So as we end this online forum, keep in mind that COVID-19 is a dangerous disease. As health professionals always advise, we should stay at home if we do not have important matters to attend to outside. Let us keep healthy and safe and follow the appropriate protocols given to us. While we may continue to demand for a better system that ensures safety as the utmost priority to all to return to the normal setup, after all, education is one of the most important factors that contribute to society's growth and prosperity. Our discussion on high-quality education would go on for the rest of our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, future educators from OBTEC 16, thank you very much for your participation. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this forum. Stay safe, stay healthy, and goodbye.